Well, hello there and welcome to the kitchen of the dollhouse. And what are we cooking up today, folks? Well, another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Joost Elvers for February 11th, the day of improved comfort. That's right. Here at the top of the page is a visual representational image of the day of improved comfort. We have us an image of, what could it be? Boom! It is a bird's nest in a tree bough. That's right. And there's some eggs in there. It's not just a single solitary bird's nest. That's right. Hey, does that speak to the day of improved comfort? Well, hey, maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit. That having been said, it's not altogether all too important, the visual representational image there. I just kind of like folks to see what I have on the page in front of me. Now, what is important here today is it's February 11th, and so it must be somebody's birthday. So if it's your birthday, I just want to say happy birthday. That's what's important. Wishing you a happy birthday. Now, if this video finds you late, as I tend to do on occasion, well, I hope you had a happy birthday, if that's the circumstance. But for everybody else who's joining us randomly, or more ideally to celebrate, I just want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Now, before I dive in with the redirect, and I will here shortly, something I like to do, and that is roll some dice. This is the DykASSt birthday broadcast, so I like to live up to the namesake by rolling some dice. But I do so more importantly for synchronicity's sake. And here I rolled a 2 and a 4 for a 6. Now, what is synchronicity, you're probably wondering? Well, my friends, as I hear tell, oftentimes the universe will put things in our path to help us realize our goals or manifest our aspirations. But a lot of times as we're going after life, we're very singular or narrow of focus. And so we oftentimes have the blinders on as to what's going on around us. Yeah, we may see things, but we might not lend them much significance. And so this is a little bit of an exercise to help you get those blinders off and ostensibly recognize the things that the universe is putting in your path. And how do we do that? Well, we need a sign that we can't help but notice. And so that's what the dice are for. That's right, your daily numbers. Now, you don't have to go with the numbers I ruled for you. The intention is there, but it's probably advisable you dust off an old Yahtzee set in the closet, if you have more than one, I'm assuming, and rate it for a couple of dice, all right? Because you want to be able to ascribe directional values to number sets and time limits with which to go in those directions. That's right, you're basically taking your hands off the wheel and letting the universe steer for you, all right? Then you get out there in the world, pick a spot that's maybe near dear to your heart, or I don't know, someplace you haven't been before. Let's say the town square. I like to bring this one up. You get out there with your numbers and your time values and your directional value, and you set off, all right? But like I said, get those blinders off, all right? Start soaking up everything around you like a sponge, because you never know. The day might start to take on a little bit of a theme. Let's go with the visual representational image there, a bird's nest in a tree, okay? Hey, you know what? You might just so happen to start seeing bird's nests everywhere, and it might not be an actual bird's nest. It might be something that looks like one, or perhaps, say, like a bird's nest in an advertisement on a bus bench, or maybe on the side of a bus, maybe even a mural on the side of a building. All right, these are just things to kind of take note of. It's kind of the universe pushing you along, let you know it's with right there with you. All right. That being said, there's also things like anomalies that might pop up. You might find yourself in a position where, let's say, you get to the end of this, directional value time limit. You're not seeing your numbers, you're not seeing anything that strikes you. You know what? Well, just step back, compose yourself, look around. Oftentimes I like to say, hey, maybe you notice you're on 6th Avenue or something, but hey, maybe in this circumstance, no numbers, no themes. Hey, you know what? Look for anomalies in those cases. Maybe you just so happen to see somebody walking down the street and they're wearing, a pink watch, say. Hey, that stands out, all right? So maybe roll yourself a time value to see how long to follow them for. But, give them a little bit of a buffer there. You don't want to look like you're stalking anybody. Maybe at the end of this time value, follow them down a couple side streets, whatever, and then in that time value, you just let them go on. But hey, maybe you just so happen to be in front of an alleyway at this point. Well, you know what? Roll yourself your dice for your even or an odd time value, ascribe true or false to it, yes or no, to see if you should go down that alleyway, all right? And, use a little bit of instinct. If it looks sketchy, you know what, I might not go by the dice, but, it's up to you. That said, let's say it tells you to go down there. So you go down there, and once you reach the end of it, hey, what's this? Maybe there's a giant steel door with a slot in it by the eyes there, if you like. And maybe there just so happens to be what looks to be an egg painted on it. Hey, you never know. We're going with the theme, right? Hey, you know what? give her a knock, all right? See what you see. And maybe no sooner do you knock, that slide opens up and they ask you what the password is, maybe. And you say, Jesus, kind of crazy. And they go, that's not the password. You say, no, I'm sorry. I don't know the password. Just let them know what you're doing. I'm here on account of synchronicity. And you know what? They might not know. They might know that's not the password, but they might just ask you what you mean. So you know what? Show them the dice. I know that there's just a tiny slot there. Maybe show them this video to show them you're not crazy. And you know what? They might just go, that's crazy. And you say, I know. It's not me. It's this guy on the internet with these crazy things. Hey, you know what? They might say, yeah, that's crazy too. But what's more crazy? It's my birthday too. That's right. And you know what? Maybe that individual cracks open that door for you because it's your birthday or you share a birthday and lets you into a secret society, say. Who's to say? Maybe it's a secret club. Lets you in there, get your drink on, or, maybe they got baskets of angel hair fries. I don't know. I like those ones because maybe they're beer battered too, all right? Even better. You never know. It's just things like that, okay? The dice were leading you on the right path. The anomalies, the themes, hey, they all kind of coalesce together. And you know what? Maybe you just so happen to make you a new friend. That guy that gave you access to your new favorite club, all right? So I think you get the idea of synchronicity there. So get out there, let the universe show you it's with you on your path. See, taste, touch, smell. If you taste them angel hair beer battered fries, you can understand the magic, all right? And you wouldn't have had this if you hadn't gotten yourself out of the house and rolled some dice and let the universe take the wheel. All right. Think you get the idea. Let's move on to your birthday read. All right. Your month is February. Your day is the 11th. Your sign is 21 to 23 degrees Aquarius of the Aquarius III period specifically. And your quality and element is fixed air. All right. February 11th, the day of improved comfort. Many born on February 11 make a contribution toward improving the quality of life around them. And such improvements may be of a conceptual, inventive nature or a distinctly hedonistic variety. In either case, the physical well-being of those close to them is likely to not only be looked after, but improved. And the key concept for February 11 people is improvement, for they believe that things are never really as comfortable or efficient as they could be. And although comforts and luxuries may result from their efforts, most February 11th people themselves are not hedonists. It is only the less highly evolved individuals born on this day who give themselves over to an unremitting pursuit of pleasure. And this can actually work out quite well for a time, but inevitably spells disappointments, jealousies, possessiveness, and pain. And for more highly evolved February 11 people, improving the lot of others is a creative task which they pursue with great ardor and dedication. And in contributing to the quality of life, to say living standards, diet, entertainment, and the like, of others, February 11 people may not only wish to make life easier and more pleasant, but also more meaningful. And improvements of a practical nature may only be a means to allow more time and energy for intellectual, creative, or spiritual concerns. And indeed, those born on this day are remarkable in that they are able to enjoy the pleasures of life without becoming mired in them or losing sight of what is important. Freedom is a central theme in the lives of February 11th people. Particularly in regard to overcoming limitations and transcending the limitations of the body, whether overcoming congenital or acquired handicaps, or just shoring up their deficiencies, can be both challenging and rewarding for them. And in fact, February 11 people hate to see themselves or others held back by any sort of disadvantage, whether physical, mental, or financial. Unfortunately, in their desire to improve the lot of friends, family members, and acquaintances, they may demonstrate a better way of doing things with all the best intentions, but wind up being resented for it. And those born on February 11 can overlook the fact that most people prefer to be left alone and to do things their own way, even if they make mistakes or do poorly. Certainly, it can be difficult to watch foolish or stubborn people go on making the same errors or failing to take advantage of opportunities for improvement. But that is precisely what those born on this day will sometimes have to do. And February 11, people who rise high in society can be regarded as mavericks and antagonize more reactionary spirits who are rather threatened by change and progress. And thus, in order to remain successful, they will need to cultivate a large measure of tact and diplomacy and become more sensitive to those situations which are best left, untouched. Well, all right, this was a very interesting birthday breakdown. A lot of different dynamics thrown into the mix. It was rather hyper-focused, which has kind of been a central running recurrent theme since all the way back to the beginning of Capricorn. But I would say in this Aquarius period here, they have started to round things out a bit better, and I think they did so here in no small part. They kind of related what you're like as an individual, and they kind of had to read between the lines, get a little bit of that, but it's not as hyper-focused as some of the ones in the past have been. So in any event, hey, I like to provide a little bit of a commentary on things we just read, maybe make connections to past days and the period at large, or just things I found interesting. So let's dive in, all right? February 11th, the day of improved comfort. You have a tendency to make contributions toward improving the quality of life around you. And you may do so either in conceptual, inventive, or even distinctly hedonistic ways, all right? To say with an emphasis on the indulgence of pleasure, for those of you who haven't ever looked up hedonism there. I know I had to look it up at one point in time. All told, you're said to not just look after the well-being of those close to you, but also improve it. To be sure, if the folks of with the folks of a hedonistic angle there, I bet they think you're improving it if you do so that way. But I'm apt to argue in inclusion that I certainly didn't portend to see coming. This hedonistic angle. A lot of times they don't lean into those kinds of things. So I like when they surprise me in the reading with such things. All told, the comfort and the pursuit of improving life as an end is said to drive the theme of this day. With an unremitting pursuit of pleasure, only a focus of those said to be lesser evolved. Very interestingly. And from the sounds of things, there may be a fair number of arguments to approach such ends very carefully, if at all. All right, so very interesting that they brought that up, and they kind of examined the hedonistic angle a little bit. They could have just as well as brought it up and then dropped it, but they didn't. But for the other folks who aren't necessarily hedonists, the higher evolved, if you like, as they said, you are out there to improve the lot in life, and that seems to be your focus, all right? And my mind immediately goes to furniture makers when it comes to comfort, or for improving comfort, right? Rather myopic in my view, but sometimes that's how it goes. But the reading relates aims toward practical life improvements that allow for more time, energy, and creative ends, and for a much more broad sweeping idea with regard to the theme there. Ostensibly more important concerns than just where to sit down. All right. So, but the reading goes on to relate freedom as the central theme. All right, not comfort per se, but with regard to freedom. Let's say here, that's despite the title, and I'm guessing they didn't put freedom in there because it might have been taken somewhere else. But like I said, with regard to freedom, overcoming limitations can be both challenging and rewarding for you. With this propensity to bestow comfort, it may then take the form of an abhorrence toward advantage or disadvantages in life. All right, which is a noble and novel thing, I would, or at least an aim and an end unto itself, I would argue. As for as much as comfort as you may manifest into this world, the reading also claims that such aims and ends may come back to frame you as someone who wrought something far worse. And here the reading kind of pulls the rug out, as they're apt to do this particular period, and kind of go into this thing on its face. What's the theme of the day, the title of the day, and how does that relate? And then they're going to throw in just some kind of twist on it. And I think that's here what they did with this framing you as somebody who's kind of looked at as a pariah, if you like. And you had the best intentions going into this thing. So I found this really interesting. Because, like I said, you may be framed as someone who wrought something far worse for a rather profound but poetically bittersweet turn. Okay. And so therein may lie a cross for you to bear in simply trying to have improved, in simply trying to improve people's lives. And it doesn't necessarily sound fair, but it sounds like it's baked into the bargain there. Let's see here. And then you might have to answer for the adverse ways and effects that your gifts may have made lives worse. Made lives worse. And here you're trying to improve it. Just for an interesting bit of irony to culminate the breakdown. Especially if you may have fought tooth and nail and dedicated years of your life to improving this said area that seemed to be at a deficit there. And then you maybe had to fight people to adopt those gifts, all right? And they also brought up how, you're kind of intruding on people's lives in no small part to try to get them to have a better life. So pretty interesting. Like I said, they baked in a bunch of dynamics today. So I really enjoyed this particular birthday breakdown. That having said, a little disjointed in my read there. Sometimes that happens with the notes, but hopefully I was able to make it coherent enough to convey my point. So in any event, that's been your birthday breakdown. Let's move on to your numbers and your planets. All right, those born on the 11th of the month are ruled by the number 2 and by the moon. And those ruled by the number 2 often make good co-workers and partners rather than leaders. And this underlines the social orientation of February 11 people. And the number 11 also lends a feeling for the physical plane, as well as a possible interest in twins, coincidences, symmetry, or other doubles. And a Moon-Uranus connection, which is the ruler of Aquarius, makes for unusual and eccentric characteristics, and a tendency to be highly idealistic. All right. I think I can see it. I think I can see the idealistic angle. You're out there to try and improve lives for folks. You kind of have to have a concern for the human being there, if you like. In any event, let's get into the notes once again. Try to bring this one back and rectify where my missteps were in the last one. No guarantees, though. All right. Number 2 in the moon for a dynamic said to contribute to a social orientation and a nature that lends to being good partners and co-workers opposed to leaders. Though I didn't pick up on this in the breakdown, if at all, because, you're out there improving a lot in life, and I would say that takes a certain amount of leadership, all right? But a lot of times when the moon comes up and this particular thing gets mentioned in the numbers and planets, it tends to be the case. And then I've also seen days where it's like, this definitely speaks to somebody who makes a better partner or a coworker, and it doesn't get mentioned. It's very interesting how it happens sometimes that way. So they didn't mention this, however. This part I'm about to bring up is that moon is said to impart a reflective nature. And then when taken in this feeling for the physical plane they mentioned, I can see how this would then be translated into a penchant for dreaming up solutions for things that people didn't otherwise realize was an inconvenience. All right, I think that's got to be a facet in there too. And that's huge because you're dreaming of things no one else ever dreamt of, all right? And I would say that is largely what innovation is all about. Finding problems where people didn't realize they existed. So obviously there's people out there who do this, and you're said to be one of them, all right? Everything, the things that people dreamt up that people didn't realize were an inconvenience, I wrote down like bottled water of all things, or social media more predominantly, all right? So Uranus is also said to be an explosive and erratic planet, and it imparts a rebellious kind of nature. Also a desire to change the rules, and with a purported ability to electrify and shake up the energy of the planet that it shares a co-rulership with. And so the moon and this so-called idealistic and eccentric nature, apparently that's kind of where it gets that, because those things aren't said to belong to typical moon-ruled days. Though, that having been said, eccentricity is largely a Uranus quality by itself. So who's to say if that really has any kind of bearing on the quality of the eccentricity there? any event, that's been your numbers and your planets. Hopefully you took something of value. I know the astrology angle is a little bit hard for some folks to digest, but I just find it interesting, and it's here in the book, so why not check it out, right? And hey, who's to say it might speak to you a little bit? I found these things, it's kind of interesting. People who otherwise don't believe in such things are like, wow, that does kind of speak to me, interestingly enough. But that said, that's been your numbers and planets, so let's move on to your tarot. That's right, another one of the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies. But hey, it's in the book, and once again, we can just leave it where it is after we impart it. That said, sometimes we're able to make some more connotations or connections with the breakdown, so it's interesting to dive in on such things. But other times not, so we'll just have to see. So here we go. The 11th card of the major arcana is Justice, a serene seated woman holding the scales in one hand and a sword in another. She reminds us that the order of the universe and that the balance and harmony will be maintained in our lives as long as we continue on our path. The positive aspects of this card are integrity, fairness, honesty, and discipline. The negative aspects are low initiative, impersonality, fear of innovation, and grievances. All right. This was a complete copy-paste job as far as the tarot goes, which isn't altogether outside of the norm. It's usually more of an anomaly if they personalize it a little bit. But even when they do so, it's usually just a little bit of a button at the end to say, this is something they should focus on, or something to that effect. Nothing too novel, but let's dive in and see what I had to say. Justice for a reminder of the order of the universe, and that balance and harmony will be maintained if you continue on your path. For positives and integrity, fairness, honesty, and discipline, which I would say kind of speaks to high ideals, all right? And in no small part is seemingly apt for someone said to work toward improving the lives and the lot of those around them, regardless of maybe any kind of unintended ramifications therein, all right? So just mind the negatives of straying from your path and maybe in fear of said concerns. I don't want to improve something and then potentially damage people's lives. I would say don't let that be something that shakes you from your drive, all right, or from your passion. It's not on you how people use these innovations, by and large, all right, especially if no malice was intended. Just be sure on the other end of it, you aren't turning into some kind of CEO who's just now there to make a bunch of money and doesn't care about the consequences after that. Like, hey, you know what? It's not on me, it's on you. And it's like, I think there's a delicate balance there to be had. Like, you care, but you can't help how people are going to use your product or whatever. I don't know. So, but that having been said, that was your tarot. I thought it applied in no small part, pretty interestingly. I got into a few of these other ones this period, and they're really tough to try and find some kind of angle in on things. It's almost like you gotta read between the lines, and then it's like you're trying to cram that puzzle piece in to make it fit. So, but here I would say pretty apt card, all right? But that said, that's been your tarot, so let's move on to your health. That's right. Those born on February 11 may encounter more emotional difficulties than average. Usually they want to have their own way and can be quite childish in satisfying their needs, sometimes at the expense of others. And in order to help them understand why they so often find themselves in emotional hot water, a course of therapy or psychological counseling could help. Overeating and sensual or sexual overindulgence can be a problem for some February 11th people, but generally not to the more mental types born on this day. February 11 diets should be directed to some extent, but not subject to too many imposed health regimens. And as far as physical exercise is concerned, many less athletic February 11 people are relatively unconcerned, but should nevertheless make an effort to ingratiate or integrate, rather, some moderate, non-stressful form of outdoor activity into their daily routine. All right. pretty interesting health breakdown here, I would say. And unless you viewed a bunch of these videos, it probably doesn't sound outside of the norm for you. But a lot of times they will dive into the weeds with a lot of these things. And I would say for the better part of the book, before we got into Aquarius, maybe before we even got into Capricorn, they would talk about specific foods. They would talk about the details of the exercise. And since Aquarius started, they've been very broad strokes with a lot of this stuff. And I think it's because a lot of the through line is they can't really broad stroke, or they can't really dive down on specifics, because Aquarius is all over the place. There's a lot of vacillations. There's a little bit of through lines, but it's usually onesie twosies. So there's no real thing that they can put pins in and then just kind of copy paste over to the days. Like, that's what I'm drilling down on. So, but I might be getting ahead of myself. Let's get back into the notes here. It says you may encounter emotional issues more so than the average person. All right, and here we continue on with the seeming Aquarius through line of no particular through line. All right, to say I don't think there have been any real repeatable similarities health-wise in this period. Again, onesie twosies here. When in others, there tends to be a somewhat consistent through line with the issues that present. Counseling is suggested for you today in order to help understand issues, and it's another rare inclusion for the period. A lot of times, too, when they dive in on the psychological, the diet gets totally obliterated. They won't be specific about it, when otherwise they're very specific. Here, that doesn't really apply to you, but they did include the psychological aspect, and that's a little bit of a rarity here in the Aquarius time, too. Especially on, there's certain days where they probably could have used that mention. That said, they said to also use it if you're addressing overindulgences, whatever those might be. You know, the hedonistic or the food, but I suppose you could lump that in with hedonism there to a certain extent there. They did mention moderate exercise, and by and large, this is one of the things that has presented the most in the health entries, moderate exercise. And I don't know if that's just a cop-out, because, you could basically say that to anybody. But there have been some onesie-twosies that got light, and some onesie-twosies that got vigorous or aggressive. But they lacked mentioning any kind of specific diet for you, and by and large, I can't say as to why, but the Capricorn period came up. The body area for them was the veins and the skeleton. And so they got a lot of recommendations to cut out dairy fats and animal fats. And for the Aquarius period, the body areas are the circulatory system rather, and the lower legs and the ankles. And so I think one day they mentioned cutting out meat, and on a lot of others they mentioned cutting out tobacco and stimulants and things that were ostensibly bad for your heart. And so I've been kind of drilling down on relating to be mindful of the cholesterol and the things that are damaging to your heart, because I think that sounds right in line with as much. Also been mentioning to take care of your veins, to say get yourself a pair of compression socks. All right, one thing that's presented a few times here in the Aquarius period is being mindful of stroke and embolism and varicosities, as they said. So get yourself some compression socks, head it off at the pass, especially if the lower legs and ankles is a body area as well. Though how you protect those, I don't know, besides getting you some high-waisted boots there, or whatever, ones that go up to the calf if you like. But in any event, that's been your health, so let's dive in to some advice. All right, try to pay more mind to what people really want, not just to what they appear to need. All right. And allow others more privacy, and observe your ideals and principles, but don't impose them on family or friends. All right. Quick, fast, down and dirty here with the advice. It usually is, but it's usually pretty valuable. In this period, they've been doing a lot of redundancies, mentioning a lot of stuff we've already heard quite a bit. And I think by and large, it's just because they're trying to get you to hear it, if you like. Because there was one day, it was just the same thing said 3 or 4 different ways. So I think that was the aim there, to get them to hear it a certain way. All right, what did I have to say about what they had to say? All right, so they said pay more mind to what people really want versus what they need. And boy, I've been saying this for years here, I think. So I think this is huge. Something everyone should be doing for themselves to that end, asking those questions. And it's probably infinitely harder than just doing your work. What's wanted versus what's needed, all right? That is if people can even drill down on such things, let alone their differences. Like I said, they're huge questions to ask. So allow more privacy, they said. Might help more in the long run if you leave folks to their own devices. All right. And so don't impose. Figure out your own ideals and principles. May be hard considering that you may see the best way forward in your minds, at least for those folks in question too. But it's also their issue. All right. So maybe just ask yourself if it's actually paramount that you help. Don't neglect your own comfort and hardship, I would say, because I didn't get the idea you focused on yourself too terribly much. And so it's certainly be less work on your end. If you don't help, I mean. As selfish as that sounds, okay? But consider the alternative. It bears being mentioned, considering everything that's been covered here. You stand to affect and change lives here, so at least from the sounds of things. So maybe be a little bit more selfish to your own ends. Hey, you know what? It might help you out in the end too. And one of the things that came up a lot for Capricorn and seems to be a bit of a through line for Aquarius as well is their dedication to cause. They're stubborn after their cause of their purpose or their passion. And to the extent that the personal life kind of goes in the back seat, if not the trunk of the car. Not as dramatic a fashion here for Aquarius, but it's still present. And so they didn't really mention too much of that here, but I can't help but think it's still in the mix. So yeah, be a little bit selflessly selfish, I would say. And like I said, it might help you out in the end and take you off of people's case to try and improve themselves a little bit. Because like I said, it's going to take some of the work off of your workload there. If you're like, okay, you don't want help, good enough. I'll just get back to being me, all right? Back to what I need to do. So in any event, that's been your advice. So let's move on to your meditation. That's right. It's your birthday. You get a meditation. Something to reflect on for you moon folks there. All right. The pursuit of pleasure ultimately involves the suffering of pain. Oh, I like this one. This one's philosophical too, though I cannot remember which one it is. The pursuit of pleasure ultimately involves the suffering of pain. All right, I like it. I think it was Leibniz, all right? He was talking about the dynads or something like that. I might be totally wrong. It's been a minute before I was studying that stuff. But once again, the pursuit of pleasure ultimately involves the suffering of pain. It's your birthday. It's your meditation. I don't want to influence it for you one way or another. But so if I had an interpretation, wouldn't give it to you is what I'm trying to say. But in any event, that's been your meditation. So let's move on to your strengths and your weaknesses. That's right. Let's hold up the objective mirror and see where you got the girth and where you're otherwise a little more deflated, I suppose. All right. Your strengths, you're helpful, you're inventive, and you're appreciative. All right. But your weaknesses, let's hold that objective mirror, but flip it to the side that blows up your face. Yeah, maybe shows off the things you're otherwise a little more superficially insecure about. Within the metaphor there. That's right. Your weaknesses. You're excessive, you're over-involved, and you're insensitive. Oh, excessive, over-involved, and insensitive. Well, you know what? I would say we didn't necessarily not know that. They covered that in the breakdown. It's not news, all right? But a lot of times I like to say, you know what? These things, they're just subject to the situation at hand. There was one week or one set of days a couple months back where impulsive came up as a strength, and the very next day it was a weakness. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, what's the disconnect here, right? And I think it just depends on the individual and also the circumstance. It got me thinking about improving our weaknesses and if we should even do so in that regard, because sometimes they can be strengths. All right, you're excessive, over-involved, and insensitive. Well, sometimes if you want to get the job done, you've got to be, I would say. But I think I get where they're coming at. All right, now you're being excessive, over-involved, and insensitive. That can have some negative ramifications too. Again, we were talking about Capricorn and what leads into Aquarius a little bit. You're too dedicated to your cause at the expense of, say, your personal or your family life. And for a lot of the Capricorn folks and one or two Aquarius, they mention that a lot of times those folks often end up alone because they didn't pay enough attention to things going on in the present. So, or in the past for them, rather. So, yeah, I would say I could see how that might be part of what they're going after. Also, with the excessiveness, the hedonism and the over-involved, getting too involved in people's lives, all right, within the breakdown specifically there. But your strengths, I would say, are going to help you improve upon your weaknesses if there's something that you wish to address. Helpful, inventive, appreciative. A lot of times we say gratitude is a huge first step in, becoming a better person, all right? You start thinking about things a little bit more, being more self-aware of things. So I would say those are going to help you with your weaknesses without you necessarily even noticing as much. If you're helpful, I would say if you're helpful to a lot of folks, it's going to come back to you because if you need help and you're open and transparent about as much, which is another struggle for a lot of Capricorn as well as Aquarius folks, those folks are apt to help you as well, overcome your weaknesses or whatever the case may be. But if you're inventive, I would say chiefly that is going to help you figure out how to get over these weaknesses if there's something you actually want to address. But I also like to say our weaknesses are part of who we are, so don't get rid of them altogether. All right, so there's your strengths and your weaknesses. Let's move on to those born on this day. When we get into those born on this day, something I like to do is look at it from the perspective of figuring out our passions. That's right. Let's not just see who shares your company. Let's try to take some inspiration for figuring out what we'd like to do in our lives, for figuring out a purpose in our lives. And interestingly, this Aquarius period, this thing, it kind of bakes in the assumption, in no small part, that you've already got a passion. It kind of hinges on that pre-assumed conclusion there, I would say. So not only do I think this is important here chiefly for that reason, but to figure out a passion is so integral to your birthday breakdown there. But a lot of times in this world, a lot of folks don't know what their passion is. So I'm hoping that, hopefully you've already got that figured out, all right? And if you do, the hat I'm not wearing is off to you. But if you don't, that's why I think this is chiefly important here, to start driving after something that fuels us and gives us a purpose, something we can find fulfillment from. A lot of times I meet folks, ask them what they do, and more importantly, if they like it, and they don't. Because I think they just got out of school, right into the first job they can get into to make ends meet, or just keep following that track. And eventually, they do hit a place where they feel comfortable, but, at the very root of it, it's not something that they ever liked to necessarily do. And they're just doing it because it's easy. They roll out of bed, hit autopilot, and they watch the money go into their bank account. And then they just roll into the weekend, and once again, they start doing it over again. But what if we were doing something that we got fulfillment from, that we were doing backflips out of bed in the morning to get after? I think life would be a little bit different there in that respect. So let's look at it from that perspective, all right? Trying to figure out our passions, all right? Because it takes time, work, and effort to do that sometimes, I would argue. So let's get some inspiration to fuel your fires. We start off with Thomas Alva Edison, all right? The inventor of the light bulb, the phonograph, wax cylinder records, the kinetoscope, and the forerunner of the motion picture industry. Let's see, founded Edison Gas as well as electric. And I would say that's a chief argument for someone who invented something that improved lives, but also maybe made them a little worse in the bargain in a lot of cases. Electricity being a thing, like it wouldn't be as much of a thing there because, people get shocked and the like. We wouldn't get shocked otherwise if that didn't exist. Arguably. So we also have Mary Quant, a British fashion designer and an innovator. Virginia E. Johnson, the sex researcher of Masters and Johnson fame. Joseph Mankiewicz, the film producer and director of All About Eve, Sleuth, and a screenwriter. We also have Paul Bocuse, a French master chef and a nouvelle cuisine pioneer, a restaurateur, and it says famous for Paul Bocuse, ostensibly a book. We also have Burt Reynolds, a film and TV actor, and signed with the Baltimore Colts as a football player, and a car accident led to acting. We also have Lloyd Benson, a U.S. Senator of Texas, and a vice presidential candidate. We also have King Farouk, an Egyptian leader, an overthrown in an uprising. We also have Manuel Noriega, the Panamanian dictator, and says unprecedented capture and extradition by the U.S. government, and convicted of drug offenses. We also have Henry F. Talbot, a British botanist, physicist, and a photography pioneer. We also have Rudolf Furkuzny, a pianist, and giving concerts in his 90s. And surprisingly, this has been a through line in the past few weeks. Old men still playing the piano, if you can believe it or not. But I would say they're chasing after their passion, all right? Not letting any kind of weakness get them down. Ostensibly arthritis, if you like. So what else do we have here? Tina Louise, a film and TV actress and famous for playing Ginger on Gilligan's Island. And we also have Kim Stanley, a film actress. Leslie Nielsen, film actor, comedian there. Gene Vincent, a rock and roll singer. Sir Vivian E. Fuchs, British geologist, explorer, and writer of Ice and Men. We also have Eva Gabor, the Hungarian-born film actress. Roy Fuller, the British writer of My Child and My Sister. My Child, My Sister, one title there. We also have Karl Brandler Procht, was an Australian astrologer. We also have Rudolf Bauer, a German model painter and an art theorist. All right, we had a whole gamut today. Pretty interesting couple of them in there. What was the one that I found that was really interesting was, not to take too much of your time here. Oh yeah, some dictators and such. Oh, did they improve comfort? I don't know. I didn't pick up on dictatorial attitude here in this particular thing. It also said, didn't it not, with the moon there, they make better coworkers and partners rather than leaders? Oh, interesting. A couple people bucked that trend. All right. So again, none of this stuff is necessarily in stone either. All right. That having been said, that essentially rounds out your birthday read. I'm sure I butchered a couple names. Let's make up for that on my side of things. It's not done in malice. It's just oftentimes hooked on phonics isn't the best tool for reading names there. So in any event, that essentially rounds out your birthday read. Except to say your season is winter, your sign is Aquarius, of the Aquarius III period specifically, and your quality and elements is fixed air. And what does that mean? That's a different video altogether. I'll leave it at the end for you if you're interested. But this has been February 11th, the day of improved comfort, from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Joost Elfers. I have an affiliate link for this book down in the description above a personalized message for the birthday boys and girls, ladies and gents. So if you're interested in picking up a copy, you'll save the hassle having to type it in a browser there. This thing makes an excellent coffee table book, let me tell you something. Especially if you, say gonna throw a party and you need a little help breaking that ice. I'm sure you've got the wherewithal to do as much for yourself. But hey, if you want to take a little bit of the load off, break this thing out, all right? That having been said, the birthday book, not altogether all too important in the scheme of things. Because it's like I said at the top, what's important around here is wishing you a happy birthday, all right? So once again, happy birthday, all right? And if anything I can hope for you on your birthday is that you're chasing after your passions. So you know what? Don't neglect putting in the time to carve out the time to figure that out for yourself, all right? I can hope for you there. But for everybody else who joined us, hey, I hope you enjoyed yourselves and you join us for your birthday reading. But lest I forget, that's right, your daily numbers. All right, get out there. Let the universe show you it's with you on your path. See, taste, touch, drum up a little bit of magic or, some angel hair, beer battered fries, and taste that magic. All right, you're apt to understand why I brought it up. All right, I know that these things probably aren't going to present like the story I threw up there, but hey, you know what? Got to do something inventive for you. So in any event, get out there. Let the universe show you it's on your path. And get your steps in at the very least. All right, gets you out of the house. But that having been said, once again, I just want to say happy birthday to you, all right? Thank you for the pleasure of your time. It's been a privilege to share your birthday with you. It truly has. I enjoy doing this stuff with folks. Well, once again, happy birthday and take care of yourselves.